you have probably heard of the name Bigfoot. Bigfoot, that beast that wanders around the forest, that's 10 feet tall, that has hair everywhere, those beady eyes, the long razor-sharp nails and teeth. So my story starts like this. There was a farmer by the name of Philip. Philip loved to farm. He'd been a farmer his whole life. And part of his jobs was to get into this little plane, and he would crop dust over his field. And before he got in the plane, he did his normal checks. He made sure the engine was okay, the wings were okay, the landing equipment was okay. Everything looked good. So he got into the plane, and he took off. And he was about 10 minutes into his flight. He was about to cross over one of his main fields when all of a sudden he felt something odd going on with his plane. It was almost like nothing was broken, but it just wasn't running smoothly. And it started puttering. So it was going put. So he ended up getting on his walkie-talkie, and there's a flight tower nearby, and he said, over, are you there? Are you there? He goes, just want to let you know, nothing's wrong right now, but be on standby. Something doesn't feel right. And so he keeps flying. He decides, you know what, I'm just playing with my imagination. I had too much coffee. It's early in the morning. The plane's running smoothly. I'm going to keep going on. So a couple minutes later, all of a sudden, he feels something go poof. And so he calls over to the flight tower again, and he said, you know, something's just not right. And while he was making that comment, radio silence. The tower lost all control and all communication with Farmer Philip. And so a couple minutes goes by, and the radio tower's trying to get over. Philip, are you there? Philip, 1, 2, 3. Philip, can you give me your coordinates? Philip, can you tell us where you are? But radio silence. They could not get in a hold of pilot Philip. And so they send out this search and rescue team. And so they scour the fields, they scour the forest nearby, and hours go on and they can't find the plane. So they send out the search dogs, they're giving them things to smell, and all of a sudden they see the dogs and they start dashing across the field towards this one spot of the forest. And so the search and rescue team goes over there, and they make it to this location, and they see pieces of this plane, the cockpit, sitting there in the middle of these trees. And so they're thinking, oh, Farmer Philip's got to be here somewhere. So they look all over, and they can't find anything. But the closer that they get to this plane, they start to see that there's this weird green goo coming out of the engine. And they get close to it, but they decide not to touch it. But the craziest part is, in the middle of the green glue was the pilot, Farmer Phillips. His badge with his name, his coordinates, were sitting in the middle of the goo. They never found Farmer Philip. Now I want you to remember this part of the story, because we're going to come back full circle. I'm going to ask you questions at the very end. They never found Farmer Philip. Now let's speed up 20 years later, all right? It's the summertime. We're in Oklahoma. We're in Green Hills, where lots of people like to go fishing. The fields are open. There's forests. It's beautiful. So there's some college kids off for the summer, and they decide they're going to go on a fishing trip, these 4 boys. And so they start driving through Green Hills, when all of a sudden they get to this forest and they see a do not enter sign. Well, these boys, these college boys, think that they're better than the law and they're better than the signs. So instead of just keep on driving past the do not enter sign, what do you think they do? That's right. They decide they're going to go inside because nobody's watching them. So they open up the gate and they start driving through. And as they start driving through, they're loud, their music's going, they're eating, they're having a great time. They start throwing their trash outside of the car. They're being very disrespectful to the environment, and they're where they're not supposed to be. When all of a sudden, their car stops, and they think, maybe you've got a flat tire. So one of the guy gets out of the cars, and he's inspecting the tires, and he sees nothing. And so he tries to get back in the car and turn on the engine, but the car won't start. And the guy is sitting there and thinking, this is odd. And so all the kids get out of the car, and they're looking around to see what could possibly be wrong with this car when all the car doors shut. So all the boys go, and they're trying to open up the car doors, but they will not open. And so they start panicking a little bit at this point. They're starting to worry, like, what is going on? They're in the middle of this forest. There's no communication. Their car won't start. And there's this weird, just magnetic pull that will not open up the doors to the car. So they start walking around a little, and they see like in the clearing there's like this little hut. But as they look down, they see something, and it's really odd, and it makes them stop. They see this green, almost like goo, that is leading all the way to the hut. So they start following this goo, when all of a sudden, about 100 yards away, they see something moving, and it's getting closer and closer and closer. At first, they have no idea what it is. But as it starts getting closer, they start seeing something that resembles a man about 10 feet tall, covered in hair. His face, his neck, his arms, his legs, his hands, everything is covered in fur. And it's got these giant eyes, and it's walking towards them. These boys start freaking out. They're panicking. They see something. They have no idea what it is. Of course, they've heard the story of Bigfoot, but they didn't believe in Bigfoot. But they see this creature, this man, this thing walking towards them, and they don't know what to do. So they're pulling on the door handle, and they're trying to get it open. They're pulling. They're using all their might. When finally, one kid thinks, screw this. I'm going to grab a rock. I'm going to break the window open. He breaks the window. They open up the doors. They get in. And after the third try, they get the car going, and they speed off. They go straight to the police station, and as they get there, they're telling the police officers these stories, and the police officers looking at them like they are crazy, but says they will do an inspection. They follow them back to the spot, and nothing's there. No goo, nothing. So the boys go on. Well, a couple years goes by, all right? And at this point, there's been a few other kind of sightings of weird things, creatures, men lingering in this forest, but that's about it. So a couple years goes by, and there's another group of, this time, high school students, and they're deciding they're going to go on a fishing trip. So they're in their car, and they're driving down the same road, because probably about 10 miles further down the road is this huge pond known for really big fish. And as they're driving, they come up, and they see to their left this do not enter sign. What do you think they do? No one's here. Why not go? So one of the kids gets out, and he opens up the gate, but before he can actually get back in the car, his buddies say they feel something like a magnetic pull, and their car, without being turned on or moving, is being pulled through the fence. These boys are like, what is going on? They start freaking out. They're getting out of the car, they're banging on things, they're freaking out, they're throwing things out, they're being really disrespectful, really destructive. When all of a sudden, they see something walking through the forest towards them. All right? And it's big, and it's hairy, and it's coming in their direction. All right? The boys are trying to get inside the car. They're trying to get inside the car as fast as they can, but they can't get in the car. And this creature, from what they described, this 10-foot hairy man is walking towards them and stops about 10 feet in front of them. Well, at this point, these boys are white as a ghost and are scared out of their minds. And they see this big, hairy, 10-foot creature, and it leans down, and it picks up a piece of trash, and he throws it into their car. And he walks over a little bit further and picks up a piece of trash and throws it in the car. And these boys are frozen. And he stands there with his hands over his chest like this. And after a few minutes, the boys realize he's not going to leave until every piece of trash that has fallen out of their car gets picked up. So gradually, they bend down and put it in the car. They bend down and put it in the car. Bend down, put it in the car. And they slowly ease their body back into the car, and they put it in reverse, and they go back, and they drive right to the police station. So once they get to the police station, they tell the police officers the same story that was told very similarly 5 years before. So the police officers think, it's a slow day. They get back in their car and they drive back there. And when they get there, what do you think they find? Do you think they find this big hairy man? No. But as they look down right by that do not enter sign, they see this giant puddle of green glue. And right in the middle of that green glue is a badge. And they go and they pick it up. And it is a badge with the name of Farmer Philip. So, no one really knows if Bigfoot is real, if Bigfoot is a person, if Bigfoot is a creature. No one knows. But the myth, or the legend, or the folk tale that is going around is that there was once a farmer by the name of Philip who loved the environment, who loved nature, who took care of it, who took great pride in it. It was his job to keep it clean. And Farmer Phil was plane went down, and somehow this green glue that was in his engine got all over his skin, and he had a radioactive chemical backfire that did something to his body that made him grow and grow a massive amount of hair. So to this day, they say that Farmer Philip is actually Bigfoot, and he's not mean, and he's not there to haunt people. He's there to protect the forest and make sure that people have respect when they go into the environment, that they pick up their trash, that they stay where they're supposed to be, that they take care of nature. So Farmer Philip, Bigfoot, is not anyone mean, but he's the protector of the forest. So my advice to you is, if you go to Oklahoma and you go to Green Hills and you're wandering through the forest or going on a hike or going fishing, my advice to you is to make sure you have respect, make sure you throw things away, make sure you help the environment, because you never know who's watching you.